Good morning and good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome on Friday the 13th. Uh, we have Emma here, and I think pretty much most of us would have somebody we know, whether in our family, our friends, our relatives, who have needed to get their teeth fixed and have heard of Invisalign. And if you have heard of Invisalign, Emma's the tech guru behind it. She is the Senior Vice President of Product and Platform Engineering and Diagnostics at Align Technologies. And she's the one who's responsible for leading the product software engineering teams that build out the customer-facing applications for Invisalign. And Emma has reached this place through quite a tech journey, beginning from her days in Mumbai. So Emma, please go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about how you got here, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for joining this morning here in the Bay Area. So I lead the software engineering teams on the Invisalign side of the business. For those of you who don't know, Align Technology is the makers of Invisalign, as well as we make intraoral scanners, the iTero scanners, and also ExoCAD, which is the lab CAD/CAM software. My teams are all global. We have teams in India, we have teams in Germany, in Spain, in Armenia, as well as here in the US. My tech journey really started sort of in Mumbai with me finishing up my electrical engineering and then really not enjoying those 4 years as much, but having the fortune to do a computer science project in the last year and finding that I really loved that. And my journey with com science started from there. Did my master's at USC here in LA, and then went on to do sort of systems programming for a few years with Intel and Sun Microsystems, and then decided to switch to consulting because I wanted to sort of get a breadth of industry experience rather than the depth. Did that for about 7 years, and then found Align Technology. It was a much, much smaller company then, just sort of starting to disrupt the clear aligner space. And then from there, been with them for 10 years, decided to take a bit of a break, and then got back and it's been about just under 5 years since I've gotten back. And had varied roles. I started as an individual contributor, like a solutions architect, was sort of forced into people management, but then realized I love it. And that's really, that's really my thing, was really building high performing teams and sort of focusing on our business goals and launching technology that would drive the business. And then grew up with Align Technology. Today, the team leads all of the software that doctors use to submit Invisalign treatments, plan all their treatment plans, as well as the whole cloud platform engineering teams that are focused on cloud native applications, developer experience, observability, all of the middleware on the cloud, the identity management systems. All of that's within the platform engineering. And then we also have a diagnostics team, actually, that sort of is focused on doing machine learning models to detect oral health conditions from X-rays and from other image modalities. So that's
Nice.
a little bit of my background.
So you have the technological background down. And today we are going to talk about in your experience and in your journey and in your company, how you have used the power of diverse perspectives and how the varied viewpoints that you hear from people, they are shaping the success of your team and the success of the company. So having said that, you have led so many, like major digital transformations, right? And could you share like an example of where the diverse perspectives played like a major part? It
Yeah.
made a change.
I'll start by saying that diverse perspectives, I feel like an absolute must. to the
Mhm.
success of any initiative. There was a time when I didn't enjoy them because you had to navigate through the sort of conflicts and the resolution of it. But over the years, I've realized diverse perspectives are an absolute must. This is really what drives creativity.
Mhm.
So this one example that sort of comes to mind is, so we were doing a large scale ERP transformation and really
Mhm.
had to ask ourselves, what does the release strategy look like? We had several thousand users that were going to get on this new platform. And we had a choice to either do it big bang, get all of them on all at once, or come up with some kind of a phased strategy. Um, and I really, really loved the fact and was fortunate with the teams had completely divergent perspectives. Right there were people that were very conservative and that were very afraid of doing the big bang, right? Understanding that there were so many risks of it.
Uh-huh.
And then there were people that really felt like, yeah, I get the risks, but the complexity that would happen if we didn't do it all at once and what we would need to do to support a phased approach, it's that the risk of that complexity going wrong is far more than the risk of something going wrong in that big bang approach. And we bantered about it. We discussed, we brainstormed. There was the group that was very conservative that kind of came up with all the issues, all the things that could go wrong, right, in a big bang. And then there was the group that was sort of talking through how we'd address each one of those and why the phased approach would bring so much more risk. And what would we do if we had to roll back? We'd be in two different systems, in two different places. It was a great discussion. I loved the diversity of thought, the perspectives. No one was really wrong. Everyone brought up all the right things to discuss. And eventually we did decide to go with the Big Bang, but we taken into account all the things that the team that wanted to do the phased release came up with, right? And we had sort of risk mitigations for each of those. We had risk mitigations for what could go wrong with the Big Bang. And it turned out okay, right? It does, but that doesn't mean it always turns out okay, right? And so
That's
for us, it turned out okay. We went live. We managed to get through all of the issues that came up, but that was one for us. It was hugely strategic. The decision that we made, it drove all of our plan from then on of how we were going to execute on the transformation. And really thankful for the diverse perspectives the team had, right? And no one sort of let it go, right? People talked through it till everyone felt like we had a good plan.
Yeah. And it's interesting how people feel so strongly about stuff. But when you
Yeah.
look at pretty much anything, I remember being on the school site council with my kids, and every year there would be a survey, and and I'm not even kidding you, half the people would say the kids have too much homework, and the other half would say
Mm.
they don't have enough homework. So
Oh my
it is
goodness. Wow.
true
Yeah.
everywhere, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but in such cases, how are you navigating that? Because there's bound to be conflicts, right? People are
Yes.
sitting in a room, half the people feel very strongly one way,
Yes.
the other half feels very strongly the other way. You are leading these teams. How are you handling those conflicts?
Yeah. I first of all, I think conflicts are natural
Uh-huh.
and they are
Right.
required, right? So I am not uncomfortable with conflict at all. And I think all of us as leaders need to get to where um, we recognize that conflict is absolutely normal. So for one, I don't think that makes me uncomfortable. On the contrary, I actually enjoy it to some extent because it makes me believe that people have a passion for what they're doing. They have a purpose, they want to be able to be heard, and there will be a good dialogue that will come out of this conflict, right? So I think the way, for me, I think what's worked in the past is you time box the discussion, right? So I'll let the team know that we have this week or these 2 weeks to discuss this topic, right? I think reasonably people are mature and understand that the conflict's going to happen, but it's all for the right reasons, right? Typically, no one walks out of the room sort of unhappy with each other, right? They may be unhappy with the decisions you're taking or driving to, but I think the teams and people are in a good place to be able to deal with that conflict from a technology and program perspective. So what's worked for me is you let the team air out all their concerns, their risks, what are they worried about, etc. And you also identify a decision maker. So that's really key for me because I think at the end of the day, and it's not always me, it could be somebody in my team, in another team, but letting people know that we're going to dialogue this for 1 week. And at the end of this week, we are going to make a decision, and here's who's going to make the decision, I think has worked really well for me. Because then people know that we can talk about this as much as we want. And by the way, we should bring everything up in this time period that we want to. And then a decision will be made based on all the inputs. And sometimes it's not the decision that you're passionate about. And that's the other thing, right? You've got to, I know that's kind of cliched, agree to disagree, but it really is that, right? And the success of the team is driven by you have the conflict, you take it seriously, you go through it, you make a decision, and then you move on in one single direction. Regardless of the consequences, right? Like I was saying, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. We've had times when, it's everything that we said would go wrong went wrong. And you have to navigate through it out of that. You got to walk yourself out of it. Hopefully you sort of, planned for the best, but then also thought about the worst. And so, you navigate yourself through that. Um, and there'll be some people who kind of be like, hey, I told you so.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that is perfectly, it is human. It is human
Yes.
behavior. You can't expect everyone to be like, oh yeah, there's so many people who will say I told you so. And
Yeah.
you should be ready for that too, right? As a leader, as a team, as the decision maker, you need to be ready for that. And
All the
learn.
told you so's. Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, there's always, I mean, it's human. What do you do? What's wrong?
Yeah, 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 and maybe it's good in a way. They need to feel good too, because they're like, again, diverse perspective, right?
Yes, yes, exactly,
um,
exactly.
any examples you can give of someone's perspective maybe at some point led you to like a breakthrough or an innovation or something because
Yeah, yeah.
you know
I,
um,
I don't know that it's a breakthrough, but I'll tell you a story that sort of pops up in my mind is so we acquired a company 2 years ago that was a startup,
mhm.
um, it's based out of Germany, and I think aligned to the size that we got to, we're just it was everyone. You have functions make their decisions. You have a process. Everything takes a while to get through the pipe. With this startup, the perspectives was so refreshing because they were 15 people that were pretty much in founders mode, right? Survival, just need to make decisions quickly, need to figure out what they're going to own the narrative on, what features they're going to roll out, how they're going to make it simple. And they would listen to us and sometimes be baffled, right? Like, why does it take so long? to make a decision, or why do you make it so complicated? And there was a person in there who kind of led the team, and we were
Yeah.
working through some sort of experience for the doctor. And we must have spent 2 3 meetings, and the experience looked complicated. And we were trying to like, no, but maybe we should navigate it this way and that way. And he unmutes and he's like, guys, I just think that can we just make this really simple? And we're like, oh yeah, this is simple. And he's like, no, this is not simple. This is not what the doctors want because we for us when we launch something as a startup, we need it to be adopted. We need doctors to pay for it. We go
Right.
right to where the heart of the matter is, right? And he explained he pulled it up, he drew it up, and I mean, it was so simple. The experience that he drew up for us, it needed some complexity in the back end from a technology perspective, but the experience for the doctor was so simple, right? You'd just find the patient, you'd be able to link the patient. He'd removed a bunch of the complexity in the user experience. and that's what we're using going forward in the product, right? And it's just recognizing that he came from a different perspective of I've always had to launch things quickly and in a way that I can't, in a way that I have to, it has to be adopted by my customers. And we've kind of gotten a bit bigger, right? And a big unwieldy and a bit sort of about ourselves, right? Like, hey, I think this
Right.
experience is great. I think this is going to be good for the doctors. And he came from a perspective of, no, I actually don't think so. Being out in the field, this is what's important for the doctors. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think that perspective of a startup mindset in a bigger company helped us all sort of shake ourselves up a little bit
Yeah.
on, you know, yeah.
I I have to just jump in there and say, when we talk about diverse perspectives, and you and I feel like come from a similar kind of background. I'm from Mumbai too. Went to
Yeah.
school there, did my engineering there, same kind of thing. But I see a lot of the younger generation, including, I mean, now we are beyond the millennial, right? We are into Gen Z. And then people are like, oh, Gen Z people don't want to talk. Just talking to my kids sometimes about
Yeah.
matter, it just opens things up for me. And I'm like, well, why didn't I
Yes.
think of that? Like
Yes.
simple things, right? And I'm like, why did I not think of that?
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
um, I think it's really important to be able to listen to everyone and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
make decisions. So, but being that you are in an environment like you are, we are at work. It's high
Hmm.
pressure, fast. There's so many different things going on. How are you still able to ensure an environment that's inclusive? So yes, we have diverse perspectives and we want to be equitable, but at the end of the day, how people need to feel included, like their voice matters, right? And they
Hmm.
need to feel comfortable about sharing what they want to share with you
Right.
or in a room. How do you kind of, as a leader, how do you ensure that?
Yeah. So I think the culture I try to foster in the team is one of you can say what you want, you can say anything. Um, Failure is not a bad thing, right?
Hmm.
Failure is not going to penalize you in any way. And you actually encourage different perspectives, right? So I will know that if I'm in a meeting and my team and everyone is saying yes, something is not right,
Yeah.
right?
Love
Either
that.
either they are too tired for the day and I need to bring this up another day, or they're holding back
Okay.
for some reasons that I am unaware of. And I will actually pause and and I'll say, this is not you guys. So what is going on? And sometimes it'll just be that they've heard this the third time, this topic, right? And
Right.
they're exhausted and they don't want to talk about it. And we'll take it up on another day, right? But so I think encouraging people and letting people know that it is expected of you as a team, and especially as a growing up leadership team, to bring in diverse perspectives. um, I think that's really important. So I have teams where, depending on where they're from, the cultural background, a lot of the teams will just say yes, we'll get it done. And there are teams where they'll push back. The
Mhm.
first answer is no, and no, we're not going to do it. And I know that if you're saying no, so I'm like, okay, tell me more. Why don't you want to do this? And typically it's not a no as much as it is I have questions. And until I get my questions answered, I'm actually not okay with saying yes. Right. And I love that. Right. And when those two teams are together in the same virtual room, it's even better because guess what? The ones that sort of said, yes, Emma, we'll get it done, are actually hearing the other perspective and realizing, oh, yeah, I was going to come up with those questions anyway, but after I said yes, and or I didn't think of that, and this
Yeah.
group's really pushing back. They're saying, no, let me ask you this. At the end result, both the teams want to do it, and they all want to do it in their own perspective. But I even think the two sides hearing each other helps them grow, right? It helps the team that's sort of the ones that always say, "Yep, we'll get it done," realize that no, I gotta take a step back. I gotta ask questions. So I think if you foster that where no questions is not okay, no dialogue is not okay, and you sort of force it out of people, people realize that it's a safe place to talk about different perspectives. Um, I think understanding and sort of staying true to yourself that if we fail in this endeavor, and that it truly is okay. And that's a hard one. It's not always easy to. It's okay to say, "Hey, failure is fine." But it's not always easy, right? When you have to stick to that as a leader. You have to let people know that it is okay when failure does happen. That and however you deal with it outside of the team, that's different. But you've got to let the team thrive on the failure, because if you don't, chances are the next time around they're not going to be sharing as much of their perspectives. They're going to hold back, and that's never any good. So yeah, you just let them, I literally stop my calls if people aren't saying anything. And I'm like, why isn't anyone saying anything? What is going on?
Right,
It's not like you guys don't have questions. You
right,
you
right.
do. You're just not bringing them up for some reason, and I want to know why.
True.
That usually
So,
helps.
so when you have these people in a room, right, and they are they're coming from entirely different perspectives. And yes, it's about technology, and yes, everybody's a grown up and should, you know,
Hmm.
wear big person pants. But I am sure that, where sometimes it ends up kind of getting to like a personal level. There's like really a conflict between two people, or
Yeah,
team members or
it
whatever.
does absolutely happen. Yeah.
Um, and you are the leader in the room. So how do you navigate that?
A lot of times I'll use our business goals as a North Star. So technologists love technology for the sake of technology sometimes, right?
Uh-huh.
They love building complex solutions. Oh, I found this really cool machine learning model, this really cool algorithm. I'd like to use it. Um, I try to ground people in what is the problem that we're trying to solve, from a business perspective, right? Is this something we're rolling out to all our doctors, to a subset of doctors, to a specific region? It drives a lot of the technology decisions, and it takes some of the noise out of the conflict, right? Because now you're grounding yourselves to, this is what the problem is that we're trying to solve for the customers. This is the
Hmm.
market we're trying to solve it in. This is what we want to get eventually into the hands of the doctors, right? If the solutions that are conflicting with each other, there's usually a lens you can apply on those of which one gets us better to the problem that we want to solve. And if you do that, it takes the personal piece out of the equation, right? Because it's no longer about what you said and what this person said. It's about your solutions, what you're coming up with, and which one best fits the business need. And the business need is not necessarily for you to um,
Argue about at that
argue
point.
about. Exactly. Thank you.
Yes.
I was going to say pushback about, but again,
Yeah.
we also like to encourage the technology teams to put their hands up if they feel like a business case doesn't make sense, or if
Uh-huh.
they feel like a problem worth solving isn't actually a problem worth solving, right? Because otherwise it becomes a bit of, hey, I'm the product team, I tell you what to do, and you go do it as engineering. So we really like to encourage a bit of but why are we doing that? Do we really think it'll be useful to the doctors? Of course, at the end of the day, the decision makers are the product teams. But I think
Mhm.
if you align people with what is the business goal and what problem are you trying to solve, usually you can take the two sort of conflicting sides and navigate them in that context and make a call. And then people don't take it personally, right? Because then it's, oh yeah, if we just want to launch it to a small group of doctors, yeah, let's do it quick, and let's not, we don't have to scale it, and it doesn't need to be the most technologically scalable solution because we know we're not going to roll it out to more than 100 doctors. And that's fine. I'm good with this design, right? Versus in another case, we want to go broad, want to go wide. we design it in a way that it takes time and do the right thing. And then the person who's maybe trying to come up with a quick solution understands that, yeah, it's not going to work. It might work for a few, but it's not going to work when it scales. So I try to apply that lens. I think it's a great lens to apply for technology teams, right? Because we're all so sometimes excited about the tech in itself. Um, and our board always says if the tech can't deliver value to the customer, then
Mhm.
it's just tech, right? And so I try to use that lens. It helps sometimes.
Great. So all this wealth of experience and
Mhm.
knowledge that you have, um, do you actually um, mentor, some of the folks that are in your teams or
Yeah.
outside your team, wherever, right? Because this is experience. It is, and I always say, in my case it's age. as
Yeah.
as I get
In
older,
my case,
I
it's fine,
learn
yes.
to, yes, learn to not only navigate things better but care less on a personal level. It's
Yes.
like, learn to shrug things off
Yep,
and move on,
absolutely.
right?
I actually think
Which
that's really important.
Yeah, which is so much harder to do when you're younger, because you're so, not that you're not passionate, but you're so passionate about things that you seem to, have these blinders on sometimes. So, um, in your case, with all of this knowledge, what do you think is like, especially for someone coming from a diverse background, what do you think is the most important thing to nurture in leaders or upcoming leaders, let's say,
Right.
particularly in tech? Because in tech, we all seem to just get very focused on things that are just in our sight. So,
Yes, yeah. So I think the one that I just mentioned, where sort of focusing on the business and what
mhm,
problem you're trying to solve, I always tell my leaders, keep that as your North Star, right? Sort of ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. But I also tell them that at some level, you have to not worry about what people say and what the outcome is, right? Like you have to have some internal confidence in the way that you're navigating your teams, right? And some people have it inertly. They just they have an intuition that helps them navigate their teams. Others have to sort of, like you said, right? They're very passionate. You have to take them aside and say, hey, let's think about what we want to launch for the business, right? I get your perspective, but this is why it may not be, completely aligned to what we want to do. But at the end of the day, for me, when I mentor, it's really about you got to trust your gut. You got to trust your intuition, and you have to not so much worry. A lot of upcoming leaders worry about what other people think and what other people say. And yes, I think perception matters, to a certain extent, right? You do want people to you do want to take into account what people say or think or um, feel when they work with you. But at some level, you have to just trust your gut and grow up, start to grow up. And so that's what I tell them. There's a lot of times, and they'll make decisions, and again, you learn. None of this is just, you're not born with any of this, right? Some people are, but most of us aren't, and you just learn as you go along the way. And I think trusting your instinct, is really critical, right? Because there'll always be perspectives and
I,
and and conflicts, and
yeah,
you
and
have
like you
to.
said, it's okay to falter. The idea is to be able to get up and get going again, right? So,
Yes, yes, exactly.
yeah, yeah. So, we already have questions rolling in, so
Okay,
I'm
great.
going to get to those if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
It is actually a very interesting question from Prakash, right? It's a question I'm sure people. And Prakash is attending this from India, but even within the U.S., a lot of medicine and treatments, even like Invisalign, etc., they can they can cut quite a dent in your pocket, right?
Yep.
So, do you do you believe that innovation should prioritize maybe creating value at a lower cost so you can reach a broader audience?
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good question, Prakash. Yes, I think absolutely we talk about that a lot. Um, and yes, innovation should be available. I think for what you have to really consider is what is the value that your innovation drives, right? And what is it worth to the doctors and to the patients and to the consumers. Um, and most of the time, what works is typically setting up segments of product and service offerings, right? Where you might have one offering that is sort of has all the bells and whistles, and not because of just for the sake of bells and whistles, right? Because you believe that there is value in those bells and whistles. You want, for example, the doctor to have the freedom to treat in whichever way they want for as
Mhm.
long as they want, right? And you then have the offering priced in a particular way. And then there might be others where you're limiting the treatment time, you're limiting the features that you get, but at the same time you're making it affordable and there is a value to it. Um, for a certain segment of doctors and patients. So yeah, I get that sort of where we are a premium product, but it's also because we believe there's a premium offering there and there's a premium value there. And for me, the way to look at it is just sort of a value matrix, right? Of where does the product offer what value, and what do you then have it in the market be available at?
Sure. It's like getting a basic car and then adding the little bells and
Yes,
whistles on
yes,
it.
exactly.
I
Right.
want a sunroof. Yes, I got
Yeah,
it.
it's exactly like that, right? And
Yep.
so you're really at a choice to decide which one do you want to get, and hopefully the value at each level demonstrates itself.
Got it. Understood. And then there's one more question, Emma. Outside of your
Mhm.
professional work, have there been any personal experiences or influences that shaped how you approach diversity and inclusion in your leadership style?
Yes, yes. So one of the things, I took a break for 3 years, right when my son was starting middle school.
Hmm.
Um, just got to the point where I couldn't focus at work and I couldn't do all things at home that I wanted to. And, it was just, there was too much going on. So decided to take a break. And during that time, I actually volunteered with Girls Who Code, as well as some organizations like, I forget the names, Digital Foundation, that basically taught kids programming. And it's hard. It's hard teaching middle schoolers and late elementary schoolers programming. And
Yeah.
especially, when they come at 4 o'clock on a Friday evening and they want to talk about all the chit chatter gossip that's happened in school that week. And some of them don't really want to be here, but some of them were sent by their parents. And it is Friday afternoon, and trying to get them to focus on the class was a challenge. And the way I got around it was to really talk to them about their interests. And we were building a website. So I said, okay, forget the code. We're not going to talk about HTML today. We're going to talk about what is it that you would want to build a website about? What are you passionate about? And I am telling you, suddenly the conversation went from, oh my God, do we have to do this? To, I want to build a website on LGBTQ. I want to build a website on sustainability. I want to
Wow.
build a website about dolls because I'm so passionate about dolls. And it was incredible, right? We went from, okay, girls, like everybody, can we start talking? Get your laptops out, like, to just talking about what was their passion in the
Wow.
context of what website do you want to build. We talked for
Wow.
an hour about, and but it was incredible because I learned about the girls and what they were passionate about. We started to sort of in our minds brainstorm what a website might look like. And they were like, I want a counter, and I want a counter that shows how many what waste is there in the different parts of the world. And I found this program that shows you the waste that's occurring on a every second level. And how do I import it into my website? And here we were talking about their passion, but also talking about what HTML and website applications we could build out, what components we could embed in. That's been a huge learning for me. It's been a learning for me that when you're at work and you can't seem to motivate a team to do something, and that happens all the time because, you know, every now and then an initiative will come up that no one really wants to work on because it is what it is. And how do you motivate people? um, it's fascinating for leaders to actually think about how does one motivate someone when they don't really want to do something, right? And you've got to find the one, two things that they find exciting in this initiative. And it was a great learning for me. I had never worked with middle school kids that I had zero influence over. Here, I have some influence because of my authority. There, they were like, I don't really care. It's Friday afternoon. I'm not going to code right now. And there's nothing you can do which is going to make me change my mind. And I had to find a way to navigate
And you
around.
did.
And I,
And you
and I
did.
totally
That-
chanced on it. It's not that I knew what I was doing. I just was like, fine, you know what? Let's just talk about what you guys want to build a website on. And it taught me that you have to find something for that person to be excited about. And then chances are that they'll do well at it.
Oh my gosh, that story gave me goosebumps because I know what middle school kids can be like. I think
Really, right?
that's the hardest age group.
It is,
So,
it is. And, girls Friday afternoon, it was about,
yeah,
who's
checked
dating
out.
who had a crush on who. And all that was also very interesting for me, but
Yes.
I needed to move along with my curriculum.
Hey, I mean, there are companies that got started in schools like that, right? Talk about
Right.
Facebook,
But the
right?
passion that came through was fantastic.
Yeah,
And, they just learned HTML because they wanted to build that website, not because they actually wanted to learn programming. Um,
that's
it was amazing that the passion that came through was fantastic.
that's really cool. Pawnee has another question. She is asking, Pawnee is also attending from India.
Mhm.
What key factors do you consider when building high performing teams, especially in such a tech driven environment?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a lovely question, Pavni. I'm super passionate about that. So I think two things come to mind. One is my theory is that everyone has a purpose in life from a professional perspective. There is something you're good at, and then there is something you're okay at. You've got to find what each person in your team is good at. Because my theory is that when you're good at something, when you enjoy something, you just nail it out of the park. You just knock it out of the park, right? So for when building teams, you have to look at your team and you have to say, what is this person good at, right? Some people are good at just sitting behind the desk and coding, and they really don't want to interface with people. They don't want to be in a meeting discussing requirements. They don't want to be with the business, understanding the value. That's just not their thing. Don't make them do it, right? Put them in a role which is going to give them requirements, which is going to give them the user story, and which is just going to have them code. Because guess what? They'll build the most performant, the most technically sound code, right? And then there are people who don't actually want to do that. There are people who love understanding the value of the business. What is your requirement? What is your goal? Show me the business case. Put them in a role which is more around solution architecture or business analysis, right? Where they're kind of the liaison between the business and the technology teams. So finding what each person enjoys doing is really, really key, right? I can't tell you how many times people have been put in roles that they simply don't enjoy doing. And you can give people performance feedback and all that. At the end of the day, my theory is if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to be that good at it. Just period. Like there is a reason why people don't, you might have 4 areas of improvement and only 2 happen. It's not because they aren't trying, it's just because it's not their thing. So as a leader, you have to find what is the person's thing, give them that thing to do to the extent you can, and you will see your teams just flourish because everyone's now doing what they like to do, what they're naturally good at. They'll automatically be successful at it, and you'll build a team that's high performing. So I think that's, to me, sort of the most important thing that it's worked for me when I, and sometimes you have to move people around, right? You have to realize they're not in the right role. And but how do you realize that when you know that they're not enjoying themselves? They're grinding through their day, right? Imagine every team where they woke up in the morning and they were super passionate about what they're doing because you took the time to put them in a role that they love doing, right? And so that, and it's not always, sometimes the puzzle pieces don't fit, right? There's multiple people that want to do the same thing, and I don't have space for that role in the team, right? And then you've got to really ask yourself, maybe there's another team I can put this person in, or there's something else that they can work on, or you have to let them know that, hey, I got you, right? I may not be able to give you something right now, but I know what you want to do. And I've got you, on my radar. And when the opportunity presents itself, you'll have that, right? And sometimes that's enough for people to get through doing what they don't really want to do. Just the hope that there will be a better role for them. So I think if you want to build high performing teams, for me, that's that. And then the second one was give them feedback on a continuous basis. I cannot emphasize how important that is.
Mm,
um, People need to know what's working and what's not working, and don't do that once a year. do
I
that
agree.
do that as much as you can on a continuous basis, informally, right after a meeting that they perhaps were in, right after whatever happened. Y- you're putting yourself out there when you give people feedback, but I can't tell you how much people appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for me,
And
it's a journey. I wasn't very good at giving feedback. I'd be, like a little conflict averse. So but it has been mind opening for me to realize that if you don't give that feedback, people don't know.
yeah.
Um, and it's not fair, right? You owe that to people as a manager of a high performing team. And so give them continuous feedback, and you'll see people are way more receptive than you would imagine.
Yeah. And it could be, good or bad feedback, right? Even the good feedback,
Exactly.
if you're not giving it, you don't know whether you're being valued or not, right?
Actually,
So
that's
if
a
you do
really
have
good
that
point.
feedback,
Yeah. A lot of
give
times it's
sometimes you're not giving feedback because this person's doing well. And
exactly. And they don't know that they're doing well, right? It's such a spot on feedback, like just letting people know, hey, you crushed it in this presentation. You did really well. Or I love the fact that you pushed back. That in itself, it means a lot. So yeah, it's both, you know, good and improvement feedback for sure.
yeah, yeah. So we are coming to an end over here. I have
Mhm.
one more question for you, but Arav has a comment, so I just wanted to read that out. Just wanted
Yes.
to say thank you, ladies. Thanks, Emma. I got the inspiration and motivation I needed right now. And
Oh, thank you, Gaurav.
Raleigh, I was from Raleigh. So yes, thank you very much. But I do have one last question for you.
Yes.
If you had to undo a learning in, the past, let's say 5 or 10 years, what would you undo?
Um, I'm going to take the women in tech lens a little bit on this one
Mm,
because I think as women in tech, we sometimes tend to want to be perfect. We tend to want to, and I don't know why, it's something that's just ingrained as a learning into us. And I don't know where it comes from. I really don't. But it's certainly not, I don't know if it's from the way we're brought up culturally or what it is, but there's something that we're taught about needing to be perfect, about doing it right. And that sort of becomes a learning as you grow up. And I am telling you, if I had to pick one learning to undo, it would be that. It is absolutely not necessary to be perfect. You will never get there. Um, you have to actually let that go completely, right? I can't tell you how important it is, especially with women in technology. And I've worked with so many girls and women in tech. This notion that I need to know everything before I go into something. I need to be perfect before I do something. Even when I'm presenting, I need to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's. It is and it is not needed. When have you seen someone be successful because of that? It's usually not, right? It's you're successful because of how you present yourself, what you do, what value you add. It doesn't have anything to do with being perfect or knowing everything. Of course, know your stuff, but that's you will figure that out anyway, right? And so I think if there's any, it's taken me a lot to undo that because I think it was ingrained in me enough that I had to tell myself, just let it go. It's okay. You can walk into this presentation with all the knowledge that you have. You haven't looked at the slides, you haven't practiced them. It's okay. And you do crush it, right? But if you tell yourself, oh my God, I haven't looked at the slides, I haven't practiced, and so now I'm not going to do okay, then you're not going to do okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the one learning I would undo is just it, you don't have to be perfect.
I
Um,
think that's a great point. I'm still learning the unlearning. So
it takes, it's almost you're never done, but every time I stumble into that net, I have to remind myself to get out of it. I really do. And I don't know that it'll ever, to your point, we'll get over it. But gosh, if I had to undo something, I would undo that. You just go do what you need to do. Yeah.
It's true. It's very true. I have learned it in small, small doses. I love cooking, and then I would entertain
Mm,
a lot, and then I would want everything, and I always tried new stuff, and I'd want everything to be perfect. And now I'm like, okay, if this doesn't work, we'll order pizza. You know?
exactly. There you go. There you go. And you'll probably enjoy yourself better through the process
Yeah,
because of chances are you'll make something wonderful because of that. And heck, if you don't, it's okay.
it's okay, and
But
we'll laugh about it, you know?
yes,
But
but the
yeah,
journey will be so much better an
yeah,
experience if you're not trying to be perfect and if you're not stressed out about doing it all right.
okay. Sounds great. Well, Emma, this was wonderful, really wonderful conversation.
Um,
And I would love to go on and on, but we have come to an end. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this on Friday the 13th.
and thank you
So
so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I loved it. I loved the
Wonderful.
conversation. And thank you, everyone, for attending. People from India are here on their Friday nights. So
Really
I
appreciate that, folks. Really.
especially want to say thank you. Yes.
Yes.
And we have had people from all over. So thank you for everyone's inputs. Thank you, Kristen, Vidyu, and Rini for helping with this, and our leadership for making these things possible. So thanks, Emma. And I'm sure you and I will be in touch.
Yes, we will. And everyone have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye. Happy
Bye.
holidays.